Explosion Network podcast is never late, nor are they early. They arrive precisely when they're meant to. Welcome to the Lord of the Rings Extended, a Middle-earth podcast from explosionnetwork.com. Welcome to the Lord of the Rings Extended, a Middle-earth podcast. This week we're going to be talking about a movie Kieran will be happy about, because here he is, joining me, Kieran Marchant.
Yeah, it's me.
Yeah, Ashley Hobley.
Hey Dylan, excited to be here, and I'm excited Kieran's happy for once.
We've got through 3 weeks of complaining, and we should be on the high road, up and up from now on, I believe, hopefully. So, this week we are talking about The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, synopsis of which is a meek hobbit from the Shire and 8 companions set on a journey to destroy the powerful One Ring and save Middle-earth from the Dark Lord Sauron. Directed by Peter Jackson, written by Fran, Walsh, Philippa, Boyens, and Peter Jackson, based on the novel, of course, by J.R.R. Tolkien. Now, Kieran, let's throw it straight to you. What was the first time you watched? This is like obviously everyone's introduction, I feel, to Lord of the Rings. Like I didn't know when I put, like, I can straight away say that I never knew anything about Lord of the Rings until the movies came out. Like
No,
they came out when I was like
my
10
mum
or
and
something
my
like that.
Dad and my sister were very big Lord of the Rings
Okay,
fans
right,
already.
yeah. So no one in my family gave any shits, and I'd never heard of it. So you had heard of it when the movie came out then?
Well, I hadn't, but I had, like, when the movie trailer came out, my sister and my dad were very excited for it, and they knew all about it. I remember, as I think I mentioned last time, was going to the cinema and watching Fellowship of the Ring in the cinemas when it was first released.
How old would you have been?
Probably,
Came out like 2001,
This
I
was
think?
2001 or
Yeah.
2002. So this was 7 or 8.
Fucking hell.
7 or 8. Probably didn't understand the movie very well. Was in love with the character called Strider, who was better than Aragorn. But no, I think I have.
Were you disappointed when you stopped showing up halfway through?
No, because I know what he looked like. I just didn't know his name was different, you know. But no, I had fond memories. This was a really cool time, because this was, and though now it's shadowed by the author being a total fucking turd of a human being, this was a cool time to be, like, into movies and cinema, because, well, not even that, but, like, every year was like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, and they were just, it was just 2 very cool and iconic franchises that I think these really imbued my love of fantasy and love of magic and these higher fantasy type of stories. I think this begins a very deep-seated and love and passion for this genre was definitely this movie.
Ash, when was the first time you watched this? And
Ash was like 25.
And did you know anything about Lord of the Rings prior to watching this?
No, I did not know anything about Lord of the Rings. I believe saw it in Melbourne.
Really?
Maybe Boxing Day, the day after. So this was during a period where we go visit my grandparents over Christmas. So yeah, went and saw. My brother went to see Lord of the Rings in Melbourne when we were down there. It became kind of the yearly tradition. So I also knew nothing about Lord of the Rings. You know, it was just the big thing. It was the movie you needed to see. With the hobbits and the elves and the dwarves and the ring and Gandalf. So yeah,
I asked my dad to rent it for me when it was out on VHS, because like there was just
how many tapes was it?
It was just one tape.
It was just the one, because this wasn't
just
the
one
extended edition back then.
No,
that was a theatrical.
It
cut.
still would have been 3 hours though.
No, it's
like
2:45, isn't it? I think is the non.
Yeah, it's not
the
3
theatrical.
hours. Yeah, I don't think the only
It's
one that goes.
178 minutes.
I say
Is the original.
So that's 2. And
That's just under 3 hours.
yeah, just under.
I think the only one that actually goes over is Return of the King.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like theatrical, only one that goes over.
Yeah. They had to cut all the trailers and like the don't steal don't pirate.
Yeah.
No, I'm
ads
pretty
at
sure
the start
that
of
was,
the
that was
tapes
probably all still there.
because there's not enough room on the tape.
Well, it was also SD, so would like visual image wise, the data was a lot smaller. But yeah, because people at school were talking about it who had watched it. Like, I had friends who watched it, and like, oh, it's so good and stuff like that. So I asked Dad to rent it for me. It was like the hot new release. And I remember watching it and being quite confused, by also really loving it. Like that thing when you're a kid where you're like,
This is
you
cool.
know,
I
you
don't
enjoy
know what
it.
this is.
Yeah. So like the standouts I remember from a kid was Strider / Aragorn is like one of the coolest characters I'd ever seen at the time. I would, to the point, and I'll point this out there, I'll get this story out of the way. So in school, they would make you write these short stories and stuff like that. Every single character, Aragorn.
That's so
Aragorn,
fucking adorable.
Aragorn.
So cool.
Like, that is the character name of every character. I stole Aragorn from this. I used to play this like online web-based game that everyone played at the time. It was called Kings of Chaos. It was like I don't know if anyone else, if that's ringing a bell for anyone, but everyone in my school played it, and my like username was like Aragorn, like some thing or whatever I had at.
Do you have an Aragorn email address?
No, I did not. Sorry,
Email wasn't a thing back then.
It's in the thing. Yeah, I don't know if I had an email.
Email was a thing in
Not
2001.
really. Email was not regular.
It was Aragon, and then also stealing something from the Del Toro book series, which I combined into everything I did at the time. So two like completely different fantasy genres that I combined into I just ripped off whenever I wrote short stories for school. But so it was like Aragon's like the coolest character ever. Oh my God, I've never watched something where a character you love so much, like Gandalf, just dies. And that was like heartbreaking as a kid because...
Yeah.
Yeah, because of course I didn't know. You didn't know at the time. So it was like the most heartbreaking thing, which we can come back to discussing that scene. But like they were like I think as a kid, like the two standouts, it's like Aragorn's the coolest character ever, and
Dude,
Gandalf died.
The moment where Aragorn fights the ring wraiths, when he steps over with a sword and the fucking torch, is the coolest shit ever. If you don't like the first time you watch that, don't either instantly fall in love with that man or get super fucking hyped. You aren't alive. You aren't alive. And to think that Viggo Mortensen was possibly was like the second actor to play Aragorn. He was. They'd already filmed a bunch with the original Aragorn, and then they had to go back and fix it all because they hated him.
So Daniel Day-Lewis was originally offered the part. Nicolas Cage received an offer. Stuart Townsend was cast, but was replaced during filming because he was too young. And then Russell Crowe was also considered as a replacement. And then Daniel Day-Lewis was offered the role a second time.
They really wanted Daniel Day-Lewis.
Can you imagine? But
yeah,
Viggo
really,
Mortensen.
I can't imagine anyone else. It's such like an iconic role for movies and Viggo's career that it's hard.
Also, Vin Diesel auditioned for the role.
Yep. Okay. I am.
It's about
Strider.
Family.
It's about family.
It's about fellowship.
It's about fellowship. Oh wow! What a fucking thing.
The Fellowship keeps getting bigger every episode.
Yeah.
Every series, the enemy from the previous movie joins the Fellowship. The fucking Uruk-hai from this one joins the Fellowship. Saruman's in it by the end of the movie.
Someone needs to make this like remake spin-off Fast and Furious version of Lord of the Rings. Haven't.
It
almost
Faramir
writes
gets
itself.
spit off everything. Oh shit.
So we did, as we have been for all the Hobbit movies, we have been watching the extended editions here. In case I've failed to mention it like previously, but I've never watched the extended editions of any of these movies. In any of my so I have like watched the Lord of the Rings films a couple times over throughout my life, but I've never ever watched the extended editions. I've never had friends who cared to watch them with me, and I've never cared to watch them myself. As much as I've heard that they're the be all end all things. Kieran, have you watched the extended editions before?
I've watched. I watched the
yeah.
extended editions at least once a year for much of my adult life.
Is the extended edition your preference?
Yes, for one character and one character alone that is made, even though he's great in the original theatrical cut, he's just fucking above and beyond in this cut, especially for Fellowship of the Ring.
Gimli?
No. I think
the original simp. Gimli.
I think what the extended edition does to further develop Boromir's character, especially in Fellowship, I think is absolutely amazing. Like, I think Boromir is one of my favorite characters because of the theatrical cut of this movie.
The extended cut.
The extended cut, sorry, fuck me. The extended cut of this movie, because there's so much depth and interest to this character. I think when I was a kid, I remember hating Boromir. Because why would you do that? Why would you try and steal the ring and betray them? And you know, and it was a good thing he died trying to make things right and stuff like that. Probably not in those words, but he was a bad guy. But through this version, where you get to see more smaller moments of Boromir, his relationship with the hobbits, his relationship with Aragorn, seeing how much of a flawed human being he is, where he just wants to do good. And he just wants to do what's right for the people of Gondor and to save them, where they've had this heavy price over them for such a long time. And it leads him down a stray track, and it leads him to make a really bad decision. And not to spoil what's ahead, but there's actually more Boromir in the next two movies that we get to see because of the extended edition.
What?
So it's actually really
he comes
exciting.
back from the dead.
Something like that. But no. It's really exciting.
Gandalf comes up and says, "Hey, we're not done."
for me, the extended edition, the extended cuts just give more room.
Mr. Nobody comes out of nowhere. It's all a hologram.
There's more breathing room for the Fellowship. Yeah, I just absolutely adore the extended cuts of these movies.
The Ash is like killing himself over here with his fucking Fast and Furious Kurt Russell joke. What's
Keep
the?
getting him.
How'd you feel on this rewatch after coming off the Hobbits?
Like, this is like night and day. This is so funny. Like, there's just, I don't know, there's something. The panning shot over the Fellowship walking through the snow over the mountains is so. I don't know what it is. There's just, because you know that they filmed that for real and that was done that, and that was just never a serious feeling I got from The Hobbit. It was just this sense of journey and adventure that was happening, and just those panning shots of the Fellowship traveling is so much better. I don't know. There is just such a sense of a grand adventure going on in this movie that they just failed to capture throughout The Hobbit. The crazy thing I always think is, and I mentioned this when we first started watching it, The Hobbit is a smaller, shorter book than The Fellowship of the Ring. I think Fellowship is 545 pages, where Hobbit falls around 300 pages mark. And this movie, in one movie, does just a better job of encapsulating that book than The Hobbit did in 3 movies. And I just think overall, this yeah, it's night and day. There's so much about this, the character interactions, the music, the overall just aesthetic and journey of this, and this is only a third of the entire adventure, and it's just so grand, so well scaled. No, I absolutely adore it.
Ash, how was this on the watch?
It was long, huh? It turns out you should start watching these movies early because
what time did you start watching it?
Like 8 o'clock.
Yeah, that's fine.
8:30. It's like,
well, the thing is,
it's
with
been a
the
long
extended
day.
edition, you get to take a break, go get some food, go get a drink, and then change the disc over.
Yeah.
No, because I got it digitally, so you know.
Oh.
Where's the break? Where's the stop for the
just
discs?
before, like when they form the Fellowship, so just before they leave Rivendell, after the meeting of the council,
It's literally after my axe, my bow, all that sort of stuff, and
like the big ass crescendo of the music and stuff. It actually, like, it works so well as the ending of a part. Like, it is insane how even though it just cuts to black instantly and goes, please change the disc. As a whole, it's just, you feel super hype and you want to put the next disc in straight away.
I mean, that's good.
Yeah, I was so because I commented to Ash the other day after I watched it. I was like, fucking 2 discs. I didn't expect it because it was like I got the 4K Blu-ray box set, and I'm thinking, what movie's 2 discs these days? And I go to put it in, and like I flick through I open it for the first time, like the actual box, and it's like theatrical cut 1 disc, and then it's like disc 1 extended cut, disc 2 extended cut. I'm like, what? And then yeah, so mine's at the end, it comes up and it's like the journey continues on disc 2. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool sounding. Other than being long, any other thoughts, Ash?
I mean, yeah, it's a great movie. It's a it had been a long time since I've actually watched it, so certain elements were things that I don't know what was cut from the theatrical. Well, there's certain things I know that were cut from the theatrical cut, but things were all blending together pretty seamlessly to it seems like it all was true. It all happened. Yeah, it was cool going back. I think my first reaction was, wow, they really did not make the opening to this seamless with the ending of the last Hobbit film.
Yeah, they did a really bad job of that. Now that
because he's only starting the book, right?
I thought this where it's okay, so Bilbo's writing 2 books. So technically, in this start of this movie, he is starting the Lord of the Rings. Because the start of this is concerning hobbits, which is the first book, with the first chapter of the Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring. So when you think
why
about
would he be writing the Lord of the Rings? Why would the events of Lord of the Rings have not even started?
But it's just, I guess, the opening chapter of concerning hobbits is very much, it almost is written from Bilbo's perspective. You almost think of Bilbo as the narrator, because Bilbo is more Tolkien than Frodo is. Because in case anybody doesn't know, the ongoing theory is Lord of the Rings / The Hobbit is very much a self-insert story. People think that Tolkien used to deal with his experiences of going to war and the journey he went on for several years, and for his position is often more. I think it's more compared to Bilbo than Frodo in general for it.
Yeah. So yeah, I kind of wish that had been more seamless. Because the last Hobbit movie ends with Gandalf coming in.
Do you?
And Gandalf doesn't come in for ages.
How do you both feel about how did watching The Hobbit prior to this change your experience overall for this movie? Because
the only things, so I don't care that it's not transit, because that's a Hobbit movie problem, not a Lord of the Rings movie problem.
Yeah.
They made 20 years apart. Well, 10 years, whatever. I don't know. As far as watching, I haven't watched any of these movies since The Hobbit came out. So there are a lot of lines that as someone who never read the books either, that I picked up stuff in this now, be it the chainmail, whatever mithril vest thing that he gives, and the comments of getting that from Thorin, the story, the thing about the dragon, just all the little comments that either Bilbo or Gandalf make about events that happened in The Hobbit. I'm I know what that is now, whereas I never picked up on those before. So that was the only thing. Otherwise, I don't think The Hobbit does anything to enhance these movies.
Yeah, it just fills in Bilbo's backstory.
My only one is it makes Gandalf look like more of a spud at the start of this movie, of just Gandalf's whole fucking discovery of the ring and going through the ring and everything, which
it could have been any magical ring.
The thing is,
my question is, why does the ring turn people invisible?
Because it transports you to another plane of existence. Technically, that is mirrored onto.
Is that ever explained in any of them?
Not in the movies, not very well. It kind of is because of the ring rates. No, but the thing is, Gandalf in this movie, Gandalf is so surprised at any connection to Sauron, any connection to him coming back. He is so fucking surprised after you've just watched The Hobbit, where.
That was 60 years ago. Why is he
still
coming back now?
He still knows.
Why has he waited
happening.
60 extra years? Also, the other thing that threw me at the start of this is they defeated Sauron 2 million years ago.
Yes.
That's a long time.
It is. It was all the way. It's almost it's what they call it's what they call the Second Age.
Yeah.
It's an unbelievable amount of time ago that people would. And yet they're living in exactly the same kind of way. They're not advancing at all.
That is where I recently heard a discussion where it's time is the worst and weakest part of a fantasy world, because time makes no sense. Are you telling me, I literally was listening to this today. Are you telling me the best sword that was ever created was created 10,000 years ago? like millions of years ago. Like,
2 million years ago.
This is
I
a problem.
don't think
This is not a Lord
actually
of the Rings
2
problem.
mil,
This
though,
is this is a fancy world problem thing that is often how fancy worlds work. So they like compare this to any other big fancy world thing that you've been watching recently. Be that Game of Thrones, be that The Witcher, I guess, like more prominent like worlds. They're all big franchises that talk about events that happened hundreds of thousands of years prior, and there's little of no difference in the world in those franchises that take place over those times. They're not really realistic compared to our real world in which, you know, technology and these sorts of things change. But that's because they want to keep them within the fantasy universe and things. So they don't want them to invent machine guns.
No. And it's 2,500 years.
It's a shame.
But otherwise, all your complaints are, again, Hobbit movie problems. So Gandalf at the start of this, not like being clicked onto the One Ring. When they made this, like, they didn't know he was going to add all this stuff to the Hobbit that makes it seem dumb. So that's a Hobbit movie problem.
Yes, which is 100% a Hobbit problem. It's just it recolors Lord of the Rings and recolors this in a very weird way. The only other one that gets me every time, and I now get really sad about it because it properly clicks with me, is every time they get to Moria and understanding who owned, like who was the one that was in charge of Moria was Balin, who is the white-haired dwarf from the Hobbit series. He was the Lord of Moria and who died and everything. It was the uncle to Gimli. And I think just having that context for me always hits a bit deeper.
So that's a context that actually still makes sense, though. Like, it doesn't...
Yes.
The Hobbit...
No, 100%. That completely makes sense. And you know why that makes sense? Because that was originally in Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Not this fucking dumb shit that they added in the movies.
Yeah. Again, I still feel like they could have had that if they wanted to introduce that. We need to get off the Hobbit, but if they want to introduce this whole tying in more Sauron stuff, the Hobbit, they just needed to write it in a way that doesn't do what we're doing now, which is when you then watch the Lord of the Rings, you're like, this doesn't actually make sense. They needed to see, like, go in, like, think Rogue One into A New Hope, like, where you're like, that's seamless. Like,
this enhances this.
Yeah, this enhances the whole experience, but this doesn't. This makes you go, wait, that doesn't, like, why Gandalf was, it's only 60 years ago, which in the scheme of things in his lifetime isn't that long ago. Like, why is he suddenly acting like this ring? Again, that's a Hobbit movie problem, but because in the context of this movie, especially watching it prior to Hobbit, I never had any issues, and I still don't because I just sort of treat it as its own thing. Is that I always just took it as, like, there's rings out there. He just thinks that Bilbo's managed to find himself a ring of power of some sort.
Yes.
Whatever. Yeah, he's just like, just use it more responsibly or whatever. And then when he thinks it's the One Ring, that's when he's like, oh shit. But he thinks the One Ring was so lost, which is the story, like, so lost to the world that he doesn't think for a second it could be the One Ring. Like, there's no way that's not possible. So, like,
why would it turn up here in the Shire?
Yeah,
why would it turn up in a Hobbit's hands? Like, it's 100%.
Yeah. I really enjoyed this. I think going from The Hobbit into this, it's just day and night. Similar to Kieran was saying, in terms of quality and everything. Watching these on, like, because I got the 4K box set, so not only am I watching them on 4K for the first time, last time I watched them was DVDs and not even on Blu-ray, and then watching the extended editions for the first time. I think the extended editions, at least, well, the first one I've watched, Fellowship, I think solely there's nothing here that seems like it should have still been left on the cutting room floor. Like, looking up after what was added, I'm like, that's great. Like, the movie, although long, I don't feel like there's anything in here that I would actually cut. That's the thing, like, it's an extended cut, but it definitely all feels like it enhances both this film and the future ones, I guess. There are some stuff where I'm like, oh, like, it's sort of interesting because they sort of ruin, I guess, the reveal of Strided Aragorn a little bit more in this. It's sort of like this movie, like, takes away that slower tease from the theatrical cut because they're just like, well, you've already, like, everyone watching this has already seen the movie before. So, like, because that scene added where he's like at the grave or whatever, and is it Theandril or whoever comes over? I can't remember what character comes over and, like, oh no, old mate, what's the elf dude's name? Hugo Weaving's character, whatever his name is. Elrond. Like, Elrond comes over and, like, tries to tell him to go be the king and stuff like that, which is added. Like, that's well before I remember ever, like, him being talked about.
You only, in the theatrical cut, all of Aragorn's stuff is, you kind of discover that through his relationship and connection with Boromir.
Yeah.
And his discussions with Boromir.
Yeah, so like having that, and that's like so much earlier. So like, I don't think it ruins the movie, but it's just like it definitely plays towards an audience who sort of already knows the movie the first time. So it's like, yeah, watch the theatrical cut and then watch the extended cut because it just makes the movie better. But and then yeah, the 4K version, I think the film looks really, really great. I looked up some comparison shots to the old ones because I was like, I don't know, this scene looks like it's like different from my memory and stuff like that. It's just because there's been some like retoning and stuff, like so the colors actually look a lot more natural, and some scenes don't have like this green or blue filter that I have in my memory from certain scenes that were over the top. It's Peter Jackson like retouched them. The special effects have been touched up, but not George Lucas. So that's good. So that means like
it's not like it doesn't stand out like it's all of them. Like I always remember the one that stands out to me is every time is the Balrog. I'm always like, is the Balrog look that good originally? And the answer is no.
No.
The Balrog looks amazing in these cuts.
Yeah, the Balrog looks really good, but also still you can tell it's special effects. Like you can tell it's special effects. Not even in a bad way. It's like it looks good. Like it's been retouched enough that it looks good, but not also overdone to the point that they literally replaced it. Like and what it still looks comparable. Like it's hard to say. It's like comparing a remake to a remaster. It's like it's a remaster and a good one at that. So not. But yeah, so I really enjoyed all of that. But yeah, like just comparing the music. Yeah, like
Dude,
just the epicness of the score is like one of the best.
I love like there's beats like I always, even when I haven't watched Lord of the Rings in a very long time, I always randomly hum the Shire's theme. But a piece of music that has never stood out to me before, and maybe it's because I'm just listening with a soundbar and like and the 4K audio design, but the Balrog, like before the Balrog, that music goes hard. Like when they're like trying to jump over the gap and they're getting fired at by the goblins and like the build up with the chanting and stuff, I'm like, this shit's awesome. Like I've never connected with that piece of music before until watching this time, and I couldn't help but just being blown away by it, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah. Shit is hot.
There are like certain seconds I was like, this sounds like something I've seen in something else. You know, I feel like a lot of things are pulled from this score to use in their movies, you know.
Probably have.
Like, obviously, that epic, like, the build-up sounds, you know.
Fuck, what was I going to say? I forgot now. Something. Yeah, I don't know. The other thing is that, in comparison, again, like, coming off The Hobbit, the core cast, I feel like I know all the characters a lot better. They're a lot more enjoyable to spend time with. I don't feel like I don't know anyone. That they all get a little bit more. The only character, like you could be like, oh, Gimli gets like the least time, but even he gets like that moment in the cave, like to see him like break down and cry and like all that sort of stuff. So
is Gimli even introduced? Like, you know,
yeah,
like, this is Gimli or whatever.
I think he is during the council scene.
Yeah, they introduce him, but like that's it. He's just like there.
But Gimli is always...
Of course we know who Legolas is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think his spot is very much more of maybe a slightly comedic role and very stereotypical for being a dwarf. Moria kind of brings that out of him a lot with his pig-headedness and his stubbornness and just that whole interaction with Gandalf and being like, why the fuck aren't we just going to the Mines of Moria? Like, our cousins will celebrate us and give us a explanation, and you can just know.
Apparently, that's the change from the books, right?
Pardon?
That's the change from the books. The whole Moria section.
Not that I can remember.
Well, according to Wikipedia, it is. Apparently, Gandalf was in favor of going to Moria in the books. Apparently.
Oh, okay. I did not know that part. Also, I cannot remember Pippin and Gandalf's relationship with being so much of just
Gandalf's like consistently like you're a fucking Pippin, you piece of shit. Like,
100%. It is quiet moment during the Fellowship. Fuck off, Pippin.
Yeah,
like
he'll literally be sitting in the corner talking to Frodo, like smoking a pipe, being like, "Oh, life, Frodo, my sweet young boy, Pippin, you fucking cunt." Like,
I'm sat there going, I can't remember this being this harsh towards Pippin. Like, Pippin is just the whipping boy of this entire fucking movie.
I think it was the moment where like he's like trying to bring the door, like open the door or whatever, and he says something. He's like, "If I wanted something from you, you did win it for." Like shut up. I was like, "Whoa, Gandalf." Need to chillax.
Well, he did knock that skeleton.
I mean, yeah, he deserved to get in trouble for that.
That's
So,
what
you know.
he should have.
100%.
So he totally brought. It's his fault. The Gandalf said. What do you think about it?
It's true. Karen, what's your favorite scene, moment, sequence from this film?
Fuck, that's a hard one. Which is so hard, which is funny because this is so the polar opposite of The Hobbit. Because I'm like, The Hobbit, I'm just like, I don't fucking know. There was good scenes during this. Where this is just from start to finish, I'm just in love. It is a tie between either Aragorn fighting the Ringwraiths, or either Aragorn fighting the Ringwraiths or Boromir's death scene. I think is the two top ones for me, because I think for me this is the best Sean Bean death in the history of Sean Bean deaths. Man likes to die in movies, and this is like the number one. This is my favorite. I just think, I think both are iconic and both do so much for this movie and so much for the Lord of the Rings going forward.
Ash, do you ever?
Yeah, I would agree. The Boromir death would be pretty high there, and Aragorn like taking out that old gummy bastard, but also, Sam going into the river, can't swim. He's always going to be there. Always going to be there, Mr. Frodo.
Fucking idiot.
I promise, Gandalf.
I would say mine. Is also, for the sake of picking something different, I won't say the Boromir death, because that was like as a kid, that was the scene, like the most epic shit ever. Like him taking all those arrows and still fighting. I was like, what a fucking badass. Then Aragorn comes in and kicks ass. So I would say run up has to be. Come on, no one said it. Gandalf. You shall not pass. Like, come on, it's the line.
That's true.
The moment, it's true.
I mean, the other lines. I'm not a conjurer of cheap tricks.
Yeah. Well,
no. My favorite Gandalf line, and it's just because
run, you fools.
No.
Oh.
It's just, and it's such a random small line. But it is Ian McKellen whispering, "Keep it secret, keep it safe." That I have to say it every fucking time. Like, it is, I don't know what it is. It's just something about that line that gives me goosebumps every fucking time, because it's like, oh shit, here we go again.
I think Ian McKellen is so good in this movie. Like,
oh my god, he's amazing.
So like he's bad in The Hobbit. Like he's one of the like standouts, of course. But watching this, there was a sequence, and it was at some point when they're walking through the caves around the point where he's like talking to about Gollum and stuff. At some point, my brain literally goes, "Fuck, Ian McKellen's good in this movie." Like it was like my brain had to say it to myself for some reason.
There's so much to it that you're just like he's just, considering he is only in half to 3/4 of this movie.
I mean, he does get captured like straight away.
Hey, but that's because he thinks Sauron's his buddy. Actually,
Yeah,
also,
that's true.
can I say Saruman versus
Saruman turned real quick.
Turned real quick. He turned heel. Saruman versus Gandalf. The fight in this one is so much better than the fight in the theatrical cut, because I think the fight in the theatrical cut is just Gandalf getting his ass handed to him. I think it's just Gandalf gets like thrown up against the wall and then spun across the floor.
Yeah,
there's a lot more back
That's
and
what I
forth
remember.
into this one. There's a lot more Gandalf having to go back at Saruman, and that I really enjoy that whole scene a lot more in this version, comparing it to what was originally released.
Before I forget, also just something about the 4K release that I picked up on that helps here is that the scene like where Gandalf's strapped on, like stuck on top of the tower, being able to see, you can see in small detail all those trees being pulled down around him and stuff like that I definitely have never noticed before. It was just like a small detail. And it's kind of sad to watch, actually, that he's destroying this entire forest.
Especially when you
which he does again in the next movie, I guess. But
the scene of Gandalf walking through Isengard with Saruman before he turns.
Yeah, it's like a very beautiful place, and
is a very beautiful place. It's so green.
Yeah.
It's so green and beautiful, and you don't see that originally. And then to see how quickly it turns into this barren death place that is just filled with just machines of war and soldiers is just, it's really shows the length that Saruman is willing to go and does go.
Another thing, and I know I pointed this out already, I keep having to bring up the Hobbit, but it's because we talked about, like, I don't like the design I don't like the way the orcs look at all in that film. Finally getting into this and having these scary looking motherfuckers, these badass scary dudes, just love the design of them so much. And then coming off, like, as of the time of recording, it was only like a week or two ago that the whole reason we're doing this podcast is, of course, because you've got the Amazon Prime Video TV series coming up. That's the reason we're doing this. They had those pictures coming out of the orcs and stuff, and like seeing those and being like, they look exactly like how I remember them. And then watching this and being like, they do look exactly how, well, at least based off those screenshots.
Yes.
I'm like, yes, thumbs up at least so far for the orcs and that. So that's really good to see. I'm really enjoying it. Is,
and
I think
we're
that's
not even at
promising.
the best orcs yet. The best orcs are in Two Towers. Like, all the orcs in Two Towers are fucking insane. Like, there's just the whole orc and Merry and Pippin scenes are just fantastic to come. So I'm excited.
Fucking Merry and Pippin, am I right?
No, just fucking
causing
Pippin.
chaos
Mary's just there along the way. It's just fucking Pippin. Pippin is at fault. It's a random thought though I had. Can you imagine if you were the fifth friend? If you were the unnamed fifth friend, one night sat at the Green Dragon having your drink, and your mates Merry, Pippin, Frodo, and Sam just don't rock up. They just don't, because Sam and Frodo went off an adventure and randomly, and you were supposed to go to the farm with Merry and Pippin. You were supposed to go there and you slept in. You fucking slept in that day, and all because of that, you didn't go on this adventure. You know, even though it's a non-canon character and not something that probably exists, I just had that thought this time watching it. I was like, that's hilarious.
I mean, I'm sure he's happy because hobbits don't like adventure, right?
It's true.
That's the whole thing.
One thing
like peace and calm.
True, but he's going to get FOMO. His mates have gone, you know?
Not everybody gets FOMO.
Talking about like that drinking scene. I don't recall that. Maybe it's extended in this cut or something. Well, I just don't remember much of the drinking scene being in the theatrical cut. And I definitely don't remember them like doing this whole like Sam setting up his future wife. I don't remember that being in the theatrical cut.
It's actually a lot better in this one, because in the original, the only moment you get of Sam and his love interest is him pining at her across the room while she's dancing.
Okay.
And Frodo kind of making a little bit of fun of him.
And then you have that moment when they're walking out of the building and like talking, and then or whatever. Like Frodo says something about her or something, which I don't remember at all. So not seeing that before. So that was good. Because I think like I remember watching the originals, and as a kid, I definitely don't remember them pining at one another. By the time I got around and Return of the King came out, and they're suddenly like, oh, we get married and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, I'm like, what? Like, who the fuck is this girl? Where'd she come from? I don't know. I think I was about to ask Ash, but no, I did my favorite scene. We're done on that. It's fine. Kieran, anything else you want to talk about?
I've got two more quick points. One, and I don't know, is as I've got older, or maybe it's just because I'm more aware of Lord of the Rings and I've watched more kind of directors behind the scenes commentary and stuff like that. But the scenes where they have to use a size double for the hobbits become more and more obvious every time I watch. And like you can begin to see more and more of the masks that they wear to cover over their faces and stuff.
I think that's also like another downside of the 4K release is that you will spot that stuff more so than you were watching it on like previous like DVD, grainy, VHS or like whatever else.
And the other one, Arwen in this book movie is given a lot more of a substantial role to play throughout it. The Arwen's flight from the Ringwraiths into her summoning the water of the canals to banish them, that is an addition into this and wasn't a part of Lord of the Rings. And I find that really interesting when you compare that to Tauriel from The Hobbit, which was a created character that we kind of failed to connect with because it was like she was made just for a love interest. I feel like Arwen is given more...
She should have summoned like water horses.
Water horses, man.
So hold on, pause, because as I've said a million times, I haven't read the Lord of the Rings books. So is she a character at all in the books?
Yes, she is in Lord of the Rings.
So she's still the love
Aragorn's
interest for
interest.
Aragorn. Okay,
she's still in love interest, but Peter Jackson and the team, and I think this was partly because it was Liv Tyler, but they wanted to bring her more into the forefront of the story in Fellowship, and gave her this more heroine role to play to save Frodo and have more of a part to play in it compared to it, which I think is, this is how you do it, how you do influence positive female characters in your stories without having to make one up for a love interest for a weird love triangle.
Thank God. This movie is so good that I know exactly what's going to happen, but when she's like that chase sequence, I'm like edge of my seat, right? Yep. And plus, like pair that the Gandalf scene, I know exactly what's going to happen. I'm still edge of my seat. I know what's going to happen. There's these two scenes in this movie. I'm like, oh girl, like, so like, yeah, I can't imagine a movie without that scene because again, as a kid, I remember like that scene was like so scary. Her being chased by the ring wraiths and stuff like that.
The ring wraiths are fucking. Ring wraiths, I think, were the things that gave me nightmares though in this movie. I think orcs were fine, but the ring wraiths were.
That's scary.
They were, but it was because of this movie and just before the ring race that I learnt about Elevensies, and that whole breakfast is There's so much quotable stuff.
I was going to say that's the line. If I was to pick a line that I actually quote quite a lot from this movie in my day-to-day life without even having to think about it, well, not day-to-day, like just like semi-often, it is the breakfast line.
Yeah.
What about second breakfast?
What about second breakfast? Like I'll be like that, or like say I want, or even if I want more, say it's like lunch or something. It's like I'm still hungry. It's like, well, there's no more food. I'm like, what about second lunch or Elevensies or like I just start like throwing out random. Like I'll do that without even thinking, like to parents, grandmothers, like stuff like that. They don't know what I'm talking about, but it's just ingrained in my head. Like
there's just this. I think for me, like I've watched this movie so many times that there is large parts of it I could just say off rip and talk through it and talk and kind of do the voices parts. I think if it's between breakfast, me randomly humming the Shire scene, and anybody who ever tells me I'm late to something, it's always a wizard always arrives exactly when they're supposed to. Never late, never early. It's always a favorite of mine. I really do enjoy, especially that bit where even if you're not given any information about Frodo and Gandalf before that moment, you can instantly, from that small interaction, that there is a friendship and a bond there of time that it quickly grows, and that's the interesting thing about Lord of the Rings and this movie is that once again the extended edition adds the entrance point much longer, where there is a lot more information kind of front loaded into the movie, whereas I think quite quickly we just kind of bounce it, and I think the Bilbo stuff is added in the extended edition. I think mostly, especially the talking about all the hobbits and going through different bits and pieces about the hobbits, and it kind of just goes into, from like the opening setup, it goes straight into Frodo and Gandalf scene, and I love how it starts so small and so insular to the Shire and into these few characters, and it just steadily expands at a rate that you never feel is too quick. It expands and it adds a couple more and adds a couple more and adds some more characters, and that's where The Hobbit does itself no favors, because you never learn majority of the 13 dwarfs because they're all interested at the same time and they're not given any time to breathe on screen. They're never given any time to flesh themselves out into individual characters. Whereas Lord of the Rings, you get, okay, here's Frodo, here's Gandalf, here's Bilbo, Sam, and Merry and Pippin, and now we get the ring wraiths and Sauron and Saruman, and then you get the rest of the Fellowship added on one by one, and it's just I think this movie is just phenomenal in storytelling. This is how you look at a book and you go transfer a book into a screenplay and you reenact and tell that book. Unlike The Hobbit, where they were like, man, if we look at this book, we could just bolt on a bunch of shit to this and get through it. No, this is masterful, and I'm so excited to watch the next two movies.
It's funny you say that because the intro I'd written for this podcast, which I said I will record separately and like just tag on at the start, like as the music fades in, which of course as we're recording none of you have heard, but the intro is actually written as an Explosion Network podcast is never late, nor are they early. They arrive precisely when they meant to. So yeah, people would have heard that 3 times, 4 times by the time they're listening to this, already. But that is the line I got written.
That's pretty funny.
Ash, did you have anything you want to shout out for this movie?
Again, Gimli in this extended cut, like, what in Galadriel's hair? What a freak.
It's so good. Well, no, because there is a...
That's all
explain it in there.
Yeah.
What was that?
That's all new. That whole, like, here's a gift
that
for
is
everyone
new.
seeing.
It's based on there is a legend, a dwarven legend with an elf, where it's the same thing, where the dwarf asked for 3 hairs from the elf's, or 2 hairs from the elf's head.
Wasn't it? He's like, I asked for 1, and she gave me 3.
One. She gave me 3.
Yeah. Dude, do be tempted.
Like,
my favorite thing about...
should ask for the bathwater. I mean, that's what you really want.
It's always a minor thing, and it goes back to how well they shot this movie in terms of...
that's the crazy thing, like, that they managed to pull this off in 2001.
Hey,
like,
2001, but they pulled all 3 off at the same time. They shot them all back to back.
So technically, I guess it was like probably 1999.
Yeah, like it was. They shot it all together and then cut it up and released it in 3 years. They did reshoots. This is before the age of feeling like they needlessly need to split movies up more. I think if you released Return of the King now, Return of the King would be 2 movies. At the very least, like
I mean,
maybe
it could be. It's like we're going to watch the extended cut in 2 weeks, and it's like 4 hours, so that's the length of 2 movies.
100%, 100%. But no, my favorite thing about Gimli is still the fact that the actor is 7 feet tall.
Is it?
Yeah, the actual actor is 7 foot tall.
Oh my God.
Like, he's huge, and he had to play a dwarf, and just all of the... And if you haven't already, like, if people listening to this haven't looked into it, look into the theatrics around, like, the practical theatrics around the set design that they had to take, like the shot of Frodo and Gandalf sitting on the same cart, and how the cart's actually designed to make Frodo look smaller than Gandalf. All that kind of stuff is so ingenious and so interesting, and I think definitely if you haven't already, people should 100% go and have a look for that information, because it's fascinating, and it's just movies aren't made like this anymore.
I think that the size difference between so many characters is done so well that most people wouldn't even give it the praise it sort of needs. Like it's like that thing
just
about
too seamless.
Yeah, it's that thing about like really good special effects is something you won't even notice. Like you don't even really think about it. It's just the characters, which is good because you don't want the audience actually thinking about how good it is really, unless you're doing a rewatch like we are now. But you're sitting in the cinema watching something like this for the first time. You don't want people thinking like, oh, they've done a good job. You just want to the brain to accept that.
Yeah.
The characters,
you don't want to have to question how the fuck the Hobbiton and Bag End is so big for Bilbo, but is so small for Gandalf. Like you don't want to be taken out of the moment to think about that, but that's the case. Is that there are, it's just the way it's shot and the way it's formed is, it's always really fun.
All right.
Also, the foreshadowing of Gollum, like through this.
Oh, it's so fucking good.
I mean, there is again a little contradiction to the Hobbit, of Bilbo finding the ring in this recollection.
Yes.
Where in the movie he finds it before he comes across Gollum. In this, he finds the ring after Gollum has clearly lost it.
Yes.
And realizes he's lost it.
Whatever.
Which is, then again, it's like, dude, they haven't paid more attention to, they've kind of made that
it doesn't really matter that much, but it was just something that kind of irked me. But foreshadowing the Gollum, bringing him up constantly, and like just seeing glimpses of him screaming Baggins and Shire.
Baggins!
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting actual Gollum Because
Also-
I kind of forgot we don't
Yeah.
get him actually properly in this movie.
Until the
Just
second.
always in the background.
Also,
sort of thing.
super minor point. Bilbo's face when he tries to steal the ring back is fucking horrifying every time.
Yeah. It's like that old video that used to go around with the people did the troll like
Yes.
scary character. It's like the car driving
Yeah.
across the cliff and then like the big scary face pops up.
But Galadriel doesn't look fantastic either, I don't think.
No, not really.
It's very stylized, but
It's fine. All right, that'll do it. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Lord of the Rings Extended, a Middle Earth podcast.